letting everybody that this program is being recorded and aired live and will be available on tape afterwards because it's a public meeting open to anyone who wants to participate. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Jerry for introductions. Is Jerry on the call? No, okay, I thought I saw Jerry.
I think Jerry is on his way. He was just waiting for the link, so I sent it to the thread.
Okay, great. So let's see, Ducia, I saw you, and is Elizabeth
Yes.
on? I think she was
Not
waiting for the
yet.
thread too. Okay, well, Olivia, do you want to kick it off? We can start intros.
Sure. I am Olivia Richard. I am the secretary for the board, and I am from Brighton.
Jerry, we just started introductions, so you can jump in. Oh, you're on mute.
Hi, this is Zari. I'm a member of the board and I'm from South Boston.
Jerry, you're on mute.
I apologize for being late, some technical difficulties. My name is Jerry Boyd, and I'm the chair of the board, and I'm from West Roxbury.
Just Olivia has introduced herself and Zari. Do you want to just call on people?
Sure. Wesley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I do. Hello, I am Wesley Ireland. I'm speaking to you through a sign language interpreter, and I'm a board member, and I live in the North End.
Great. And Ducia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ducia Lebovskaya, or Ducia L for short, and I'm on the board and treasurer, and I live in Boston, specifically in Mission Hill.
Great. Am I missing any other members of the advisory board?
This is Carl.
Hi, Carl. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
I'm Carl Richardson. I'm a commission member and I live in Brighton Center.
Great. Did I miss anyone else that's currently on?
Paul Karen.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
My name's Paul Karen. I live in the West End. I'm on the advisory board, and I work up at the BPDA, and also vested member of Laborers Local 151.
Great. And I see Elizabeth just joined us. Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Dean-Clower. I'm the vice chair of the advisory board, and I live in Back Bay.
And is there anyone else from the advisory board that I'm missing?
I don't see anyone else, Jerry.
All right, great. So with that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the January minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I actually
I
didn't,
make a motion?
I didn't get to send the minutes out yet, so let's
Oh.
put that off till next month.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right, so we'll have to table that item on the agenda. Next on the agenda is a city department presentation from the Boston Tax Help Coalition.
Lynn, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we'll go through your presentation?
I think she may be
Hi.
on mute. Oh, there she is.
Yep, I'm here now. I'm Lynn Dan. I am the Disability Ambassador for the Boston Tax Help Coalition. And to go on to my presentation, I can do that right now. Do I have to do something through you, Kristen? Because I think I can do it now on my own, or because this is it's
Lynn, is that you sharing your screen?
I guess. See, this is new to me, to be honest. So I'm my entire screen. Now it's saying don't allow, but I want to allow it.
Oh, yeah. Looks like you're sharing now.
Oh, okay.
Starting.
And then it doesn't come on.
So now, Lynn, go to your presentation and open that up.
Okay. Hang on. My understanding. I thought I had it. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Lynn, so I feel like if you go back to the screen and just go to
Got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. The problem was that I need to, I don't know why it ended up on the bottom. Here we go. The beginning, the top. I am here. This year's Boston Tax Help Coalition program is starting, actually. As you can see, we were launched in 2001, and it's the coalition that's committed to inclusion and equity. The goal is maximizing refunds and getting credits that you deserve, including the earned income tax credit, the child tax, the premium health care, and basically the quality of the safe tax preparation by the IRS. The season has begun, the tax preparation has started, and help is available in the community and virtually. There's also the credit building program through the financial checkup that includes additional referrals, and it's programs to save for emergencies, build for credit, and open a bank account. One of the key things that I'm here representing the organization about is the Disability Working Group. The National Disability Institute, the IRS, the Boston Tax Help Coalition, and disability organizations came together over 15 years ago now, and it's launching the Disability Initiative and formed the Disability Working Group. This organization provides the disability access, community access, and a voice in the Boston Tax Help building strategies. And one of the big programs is focusing on the ASL. Right now, we are looking for anybody, all people with disabilities, to have a voice on this group. And everyone's invited to bring their perspective, cognition, mobility, sensory, and other disability issues. And we're needing you to join the disability group and bring your voice and put this out to your groups, because your experience is what financially empowers us as the organization. From the education perspective of this whole program, the grander program is that I am available to to attend meetings, to educate and be more detailed than I as here to your group in that regard. And there's my information there. Meanwhile, generally the tax program is starting. The scheduling's happening. And at this time this year, scheduling is required for tax preparation. It's not just a walk-in programs like there have been in the past. The contact is the tax site of your choice, and you can see them listed in that manner. And meanwhile, I'm here specifically looking for your activity and folks reaching out to those you know to help the working group, the disability working group expand and become active. So questions right now, you're welcome to them. I think at this point, hang on, just me and coming back to you. I exit. No? What do I
Mrs.
do?
Carl, I have a question.
Yes.
Stop sharing screen,
So-
Lynn.
How are you tonight? I'm blind and visually impaired, and I'm wondering if you could tell me, is it a website that people are going to schedule appointments? Because I couldn't really see what was on the slide. And if so, is that website screen reader friendly for those who are blind and visually impaired? Is the whole process screen reader friendly?
Yes, that's the whole process. Hang on just a minute. This is off, right? This is me here. I'm
No,
back.
no, it should be at the bottom of your screen, Lynn. Oh, is that it?
Yeah, and I exit, right? No?
The bottom right of your screen should say stop presenting.
Right.
Bottom right. It's a white band on the bottom of the screen.
Right. Sorry.
Raise hand on the bottom of your screen.
The bottom.
It's all the way down the bottom. It's not in the green, it's below the green area of your screen.
Yeah, look on your computer, Lynn.
On your, yeah, look on your
Yeah.
computer, yep. Go lower than where your mouse is now. And go all the way over to the right. It's not one of those icons, it's below those.
Even below. I'm sorry.
And there's
No worries.
there's an icon that says raise hand, and then
Raise
turn on captions. It's lower than those icons. Do you know where the volume mute button is?
Yeah.
It's on that
Not on my
row.
computer. I apologize.
Sometimes raise hand is under reactions, under something called more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if these other functions might be there.
That's if you're on Zoom.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Lynn, you need to go back to the screen where all of us are.
Right.
Okay. And now what, Dave?
And I am. It's me and I'm very, very sorry.
No
that
worries.
I'm looking,
Oh,
so,
okay. Lynn,
I
try
had
clicking on
practice
the,
with my-
try clicking on the tab that says Meet Advisory Board Meeting on the top.
Yes.
Click on that.
Got you.
Okay,
That's it.
there you go.
Yeah.
Now where it says you are presenting,
Yep.
click on that one. There you go.
There
Okay.
you go. Hey, that's great. Awesome.
You are, I've been initiated.
It takes a village. It really does sometimes. Don't worry about it. We had a question from Carl, though. Can
And
you state your
Carl-
question again, Carl?
Sure, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
So I just wanted to ask you, since you're doing, I'm assuming virtually instead of in person, right?
Not,
So,
yes,
given-
generally, that's what's happening, yes.
So given that, is the virtual process fully accessible to those who are blind and visually impaired that may use screen readers?
There is, what I will have, we're looking for doing something with the deaf, and hard of hearing. When it comes to the blind, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't want to pretend that I do. So,
What is the procedure then, though? Somebody would go to a particular website and make an appointment?
yes,
And what is the website? Can you say that out loud?
yes, it is. Boston Tax Help.org.
Okay.
And there's a requirement this year that there is scheduling. And so when you do make the call, or look into it, you can go the route that you need to, that you know is specific. I understand that.
Okay, and the only other reason I bring that up is it's going to be hard for some blind people might need sighted assistance with them. If you ask them to read numbers and forms off their document, that may be difficult for them. So I'm just asking you to think about how that would be done from a virtual perspective.
Okay, thank you. I will, I understand what you're saying completely. And I should have known the answer to that before this meeting because it's something that I thought about a couple of times. Megan Sullivan, I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's actually Carl.
My work computer.
I know.
Right. Lynn, as a follow-up to that, you said things are going to be virtual and in person. So how are the in-person appointments going to work? This is Jerry again, by the way.
Right, and it's going to be each different location has different things. The whole idea is that you've got to call and deal with the scheduling at the national or at that focus office and work on that as to how it would proceed.
Okay, and that website that you listed off and is on your presentation, that would have a list of all the sites? Because I remember in years past, you were able to, either you yourself or Mimi brought a handout with the list of sites on it, but that wasn't available for tonight.
And I will be sure that's available on the BostonTaxHelp.org is a page of all of the locations.
Okay.
And yes. Great.
And Lynn,
And I'm sure that everyone, all the sites for the in-person meetings, they're following the COVID protocols and so forth?
Oh, yes, even more so than I would really like to be at those locations because to me it makes such a difference, but I have to be where I am and interacting with you in this manner.
Sure.
And we've done our first round. I did a great interviewing. It takes almost 45 minutes to do the first round. And then it's the first round, the introduction to the program and gets you registered for it. And then it's the next that you get scheduled to where you'd want to be. It's what can happen. So go to Boston Tax Help, get connected with the information and referrals, scheduling, and then you can go from there.
I know Ducia had a question.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Jerry. Lynn, thank you. Sorry again, Lynn. Thank you for the presentation. I'm confused. I don't want to put words. Okay, sorry. Here's this. Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I apologize in advance. I'm wondering about the working group that you're forming. It's about are you forming this group to figure out how to accommodate people with various disabilities? Is that what's the goal of the work group?
The goal of the work group is to get back in action. The group was very active in the past, but hasn't over the past couple of years, and now it's getting back and doing so from, I want to say, the bottom up with as many perspectives and views as we can to be a part of it, as to be sure that the tax coalitions, every different site is an issue. Now it's different. It's not just sites, and it's this manner that it's the interaction. So we're looking for a variety of viewpoints. So I look forward to you participating.
Lynn, this is Jerry again. As a follow-up, so you're looking to get a working group going, so that in the future you want to make sure you outreach to all different groups. What is the purpose of the working group?
The purpose of the working group is to get the disability viewpoint organized by how we can make every season better, and improve it, because there's always, usually it's physical aspects, and the goal is to get as many viewpoints so that we can be sure that the outreach is happening. If that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I know Paul had a question.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, I'm just, during these unique times with COVID,
Yes.
I'm just curious if all locations have proper PPE and security,
Good
especially the
question.
PPE.
Good question. And I'm presuming that they do, or they wouldn't, they're not being opened. Things aren't opening without it happening.
Excellent.
and- Yeah, no, that's not happening without, they're not opening, and that's an issue as to why it's not going as quickly as it does to start off, with people being able to interact. And it's doing what we're doing right now. And telephone calling and.
Okay. I know that 7 Palmer Street, Mayor Walsh has been adamant about the opening with proper plexiglass, PPE, security.
Oh, yeah.
And it's done an excellent job with that. Mimi and
Right.
Constance Martin and Alan have all done an excellent job pursuing it.
Right. Yep. You got it.
I just wanted to just add quickly for the board's information that Mimi does a lot, Mimi's office and the Office of Financial Empowerment, they do a lot of work, not just on taxes, but on financial empowerment, which can help people like learn what to do with any tax returns they get back and things like that. So like Lynn said, this is like the first push to help people get their taxes done, but we're hoping afterwards that people will stay engaged with the city and take advantage of the many financial programs that we offer. So Lynn is really like our ambassador to get the community involved, and we hope that there'll be a lot of work we can do after tax season as well.
Sure.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Olivia, I saw you had your hand raised at one point. Did you get your question answered, or do you still have a question?
No, I still have a question.
Go ahead, Olivia.
My question is there going to be preference for inside appointments for people who are homeless?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a very good question. I'm not going to pretend to say yes or no to that
Okay.
one, but that it's been brought up to, the homeless. Okay.
Yeah, we can make a list of all these questions and get back to everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
And Zari, I saw your question about ASL. I don't know if you know about the history of this program, but for the last 5 years, the Boston Tax Help Coalition has organized what they call Deaf Tax Days. And they had set up a whole system of in-person appointments with people who are deaf, with ASL interpreters, and it was really successful. Hundreds and hundreds of people who are deaf got their taxes done for free. And this year with COVID, it's really going to be very different. So, Lynn, do you have any updates on what's going to happen with ASL or the deaf community this year?
Not yet, but that's the one thing that I miss going to too, is the Deaf Inc. is where we would be 4 weeks every year for the past couple of years, and not sure exactly what's going to be happening yet, but there will be some program through the phones and the system. So I don't have an answer. Sorry.
Yeah, I think
It's
this-
work.
I was gonna say, this is part of the working group, is to work out these problems, so we're
That's
hoping
right.
that people will join. But Zari, to your point, yes, I would be pretty confident to say it will be an interpreter, not just captions, because video relay interpreting is so easy to do these days that it would be the choice to do that.
And I know Elizabeth had a question.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is Elizabeth. Well, I think having this kind of resource available is important. I think this advisory board, based on the success was it Deaf Inc., did you say, Commissioner?
Yes.
That we had asked for something that was expanded for more groups. So although these programs might have existed somewhat, but in this case, if someone doesn't have an in-person appointment, it's such an important topic, but with some of the, I think it would be important to have someone with not only technology expertise, but to have that combined expertise so that it is user-friendly for whether people have visual disabilities or even cognitive or learning. I don't know if there'll be a screen sharing aspect or.
Yeah.
I hope that the working group, given that it's hard to believe that tax season is already upon us, that I hope that this input, behind the scenes input, can be gathered quickly for a rollout.
Well, I look forward to talking with you some more. It would be good to do, Elizabeth, one-to-one, for sure.
Lynn, I just had a follow-up myself. This is Jerry.
Yeah.
How long is the season? How long are you going to be providing assistance to folks?
Well, the tax season ends the 15th of, but
April.
thank
Right.
you. I was going to say that a month that's coming up sooner than we think. But there's a question as to what's going to be happening, so I don't know the answer to that either.
But the people can schedule a point, as far as you know,
Yes.
people are accepting appointments now?
Oh, yes, and that's what the whole process is to start getting into it, and you'll see there's a whole calendar section that you can set yourself up with and do that. If you want to talk with someone about it specifically, then it's the Tax Help Coalition. There are people who will be answering the phones that you can connect with too.
Sure. And I guess Elizabeth had a follow-up?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't.
No problem.
I'll lower my hand.
Okay. No problem at all. Thanks, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn from members of the public? Do we have any members of the public on that has a question?
Ask Lynn one other question. When's the
Oh,
date?
sorry.
That's
Commissioner.
okay. When's the date of the working group meeting?
We haven't scheduled that yet because we're looking for the next round of people who want to participate so that we can get an idea of that. And you're right, I looked into making that happen, but decided that we want to get another round of sources who are going to want to participate so that we could schedule it properly.
Okay.
Commissioner McCosh, if you want to give her my contact information, I'll be happy to be part of that working group.
Yeah, we would
Awesome.
love that. That's great, Carl.
That's
Great, girl. Thank you. Now, any questions from members of the public? Hearing none, I guess we'll move to the next portion of the agenda, which is a presentation from the traffic department, I believe, on the Columbus Avenue bus line.
So thanks very much, everyone. My name is Matt Moran. I work for the Boston Transportation Department. I lead a group there called the Transit Team. So we were formed just about 2 years ago to collaborate with the MBTA on improving transit service around the city, and have a brief overview of the transit team, who we are, what we're doing, and then a presentation on the Columbus Ave Center Running Bus Lane project, which is under construction as we speak and will hopefully be finished by the spring. So let me just share my screen with you all real quick. All right, so it should be presenting. There we go. Can everyone see that? Could just give me a yes, because I can't actually see anyone.
Yes,
I can.
I can see it too.
All right, great. So as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the BTD transit team and then a little bit about the Columbus Ave project. So before I get into the transit team, I just wanted to introduce real quick, we have a new staff member who just started about a week and a half ago. Kirsty Hostetter will be has just joined the BTD transit team and will be assisting on this project and a variety of other projects as we move forward. So hopefully get to know her through some accessibility work that we'll be doing and some other bus related projects. So what is the transit team? So as I mentioned before, we're located in the Boston Transportation Department, and we really partner with the MBTA, communities, and other partners on improving transit on Boston streets primarily. Our main goals are improving safety, enhancing mobility, and improving the public realm. This picture on the right is a picture of the installation of a new bus lane on Summer Street that went in late 2019. And as you can see, they're just putting down the red paint that sort of signifies that new bus lane, that bus connection. So why focus on bus priority? In the region, the quality of bus trips is declining, and ridership is down, primarily due to traffic. This is before the pandemic, but of course, as traffic presumably will get back to normal, we still see this as being a major issue. Obviously, equity is a paramount concern in Boston, and many of our bus riders come from areas of the city where we have majority of people of color and majority low income. Accessibility to buses needs to be improved. Obviously, the curbside pickup drop-off areas for a lot of buses are blocked. The width is insufficient. There's a variety of other things that prevent full accessibility to bus stops. And we can make improvements to buses relatively quickly compared to other transit improvements. So if you're trying to build a new subway line, that might take years and years to plan. We can make improvements to buses over the course of 4 or 5 months if it's just a striping project, all the way up to a year, which is what I'll be talking about now with the Columbus Ave project, or I should say in a minute. So I mentioned before, equity is a key focus of ours. 73% of transit commuters in Dartmouth, their 30 minutes or longer. Your typical Bostonian has a commute of about 28 minutes, so that's already a disparity. Commuters of color in particular face significantly higher commute times and less reliable transit options. And one example is resident of Mattapan, typical resident of Mattapan has about a 45-minute commute. As I said before, that compares to about a 28-minute commute for an average Bostonian. So some projects that we're working on, I'm going to dive into the Columbus Ave project in a minute. The North Washington Street bus lane that we installed about a year and a half ago at this point in 2019, we'll be getting sort of a twin version on the outbound side. We anticipate that'll save about 5 minutes and primarily serve the 92, the 93 which go to Charlestown, and then the 111 that goes up to Chelsea. And then on the right, the outbound Rosendale bus lane has been partially striped. We were prevented due to weather from finishing the striping, but we're hoping to have that done in April. And should save about 8 minutes and serves a variety of different bus routes that are primarily going to Rosendale, West Roxbury, Hyde Park, and other locations. So some other projects that we have in the pipeline, we have some major bus priority planning efforts. So we're looking at Blue Hill Avenue and a North Station to Seaport bus connection as two examples. The bus stop accessibility and amenities. So we're working with the MBTA on the PADI program to make bus stops more accessible. We're working with the MBTA, developers, and internally to add bus stop amenities, more shelters, more seating areas, countdown clocks, and the like. We're also working with the MBTA on various rail improvements. So the MBTA back in 2019, back in 2020, added 8 new trips on the Fairmont line. The Green Line Transformation Program, we're working with them on improving station stop accessibility, improving operations, and really working with them on design. And as I mentioned before, we're working on various transit equity initiatives. We are continuing to stock Charlie cards in libraries because they tend to be hard to get unless you can get to downtown. And then we're working on various fare equity initiatives to try and make fares lower, more accessible to folks around the city. So jumping into Columbus Ave, and I'll be here for a few minutes afterwards, obviously, to answer any questions, but if you have any clarifications that you have in the middle of the presentation, please let me know. So Columbus Ave is an interagency collaboration, primarily between the Boston Transportation Department and the MBTA. As you might know, the Transportation Department handles things like traffic signals, we look at street widths, curbside regulations, lane assignments. The T handles things like bus routes, bus schedules, fares, the fleet size and distribution. And so by partnering together, we can improve bus service on our streets by doing things to improve the geometry of the streets, which then in turn leads to better MBTA service. So the Columbus Ave project that's currently in construction is a little bit under a mile. It goes from just the edge of Franklin Park through Eggleston Square and then up to the orange line at Jackson Square. It serves 3 high ridership bus routes, and it began construction in the fall, and we expect it'll be completed later on this spring. And so a little bit about the planning background. So this project came out of 2 major initiatives, Go Boston 2030 and the JP Rocks Transportation Action Plan. The first thing on Go Boston 2030 is the goal of Go Boston 2030 is to reduce driving alone rates in the city, but also then increase the number of people who are taking public transit. So increase that by about 1/3, increase people who are walking, and increase people who are cycling around the city. We want to do this for obviously improving mobility, increasing environmental impacts of driving, and we think it actually creates for a better, more vibrant city by having fewer people drive. So this project overlaps with the proposed Mattapan to LMA rapid bus connection, which was profiled in Go Boston 2030. As you can see on the right, the goal of this is to provide a good, seamless connection for people from Mattapan, the Blue Hill Ave corridor, Dorchester, and Roxbury to get to the Longwood Medical area. So as I said, you can see that map on the right. So we also looked at this in the context of another planning study, which was the JP Rocks Transportation Action Plan. So JP Rocks Transportation Action Plan recommended bus lanes and other neighborhood safety improvements in the Columbus Ave area. And to further refine that, we went out to different neighborhood meetings, we went to different civic association meetings, and we heard that there were a number of issues. So transit delays were a big concern that we heard. About 8,000 riders use this corridor every single day. Uncomfortable conditions for people who are walking, cycling, or waiting for the bus. And of course, parking is still very important on this corridor. We want to make sure that any plan that we put forward retained as much parking where possible during the construction process. So those are the concerns that we heard. And so what's happening? So based on all those community conversations, based on the design feedback that we got both internally and externally from the neighborhood, we are installing center running bus lanes on Columbus Ave, 8 new station stop platforms, various pedestrian improvements, which we'll get into in a minute, and then sort of continuing with an ongoing process for bike network enhancements and neighborhood traffic calming. So these were the previous conditions on Columbus Ave. It was a 4-lane cross-section. There were a number of safety concerns with this cross-section because of speeding traffic. Pedestrians didn't necessarily feel comfortable crossing the street. So, and then also, of course, there were a number of uncompliant ramps along the corridor. And so this slide shows what the final condition will look like when we're all done. So we are adding, as I mentioned, center running bus lanes with fully accessible station stops and platforms in the middle of the street. A few key benefits of center running bus lanes as opposed to our sort of more traditional side running bus lanes, which would be like the Silver Line in the South End or the 57 and 66 buses on Brighton Ave. What center running bus lanes allow for is they allow for us to have a more reliable and predictable connection. There's no cars that are going to be getting into the bus lane legally to park or to make a right turn. This also means that cars will have a much more difficult time double parking in a bus lane. And it also means that cars will have a more difficult time, or it might be impossible to double park at a bus stop. So where a bus might have to stop in the middle of the street today to pick up and drop off passengers because it can't get over to the curb, this will mean that a station stop will remain fully accessible. This is a picture, or I should say a rendering from the street level, showing what the center running bus lane will look like. As you can see, I think I can bring my cursor up, there we go. We have a very short pedestrian crossing to get to one of these boarding platforms. And passengers, of course, can access that platform by hitting, I believe, or actually I should say, we're gonna have these on pedestrian recall, be able to cross, with a traffic light. Great, so some bus stop features that will be included. And just to give some comparison to what these are going to look like, if you've seen some of the recently upgraded Green Line stop on either Huntington Ave or Commonwealth Ave, these will look and feel similar to those Green Line stops. Again, the recently upgraded ones, I know there's still a number of Green Line stops that are non-compliant that still have issues, but they will have fully accessible paths of travel. They'll have a good shelter with a canopy, seating, signage to indicate the bus stop and some pedestrian wayfinding elements, good lighting, trash cans, countdown clocks, emergency call boxes, and a provision for a future fare vending machine. As many of you might know, the MBTA is hoping to move to a off-board fare payment system at some point in the future. They're not there yet, but we have a provision for a future fare vending machine with all these platforms. So this is a rendering of what a stop will look like. This is the one that's being built at Walnut Ave, which is the one closest to Franklin Park that we're building out.
Are there tactile strips there for those who are visually impaired?
Yes, they're tactile strips. I don't know if you can see it right here, but where my cursor is there, yes, there are tactile strips.
Thank you.
And then the pedestrian crossings, they'll be much safer and shorter than they are today. This is a rendering on the right showing that pedestrian crossing, but they will be fully accessible paths of travel. They'll be shorter with pedestrian refuge islands and bump outs, and pedestrian signals with audible pedestrian indicators. And so this is what the construction looks like right now. What you're seeing on the screen on the left and on the right are the two platforms. So the yellow here are the the tactile warning strips. And obviously we haven't installed the shelters yet, but those will be, or the canopies I should say, but those will be installed over the full length of the platforms, providing for weather protection for folks who are waiting there. This is a bumped out crossing at the Eggleston Square branch Public Library, which is obviously still in construction. As I said before, this will provide a much shorter crossing than existed previously. It'll provide a much better pedestrian refuge in the middle of the street. And pedestrians will now only be crossing, essentially, before you were crossing 4 lanes of traffic, two going in either direction. Now you'll be crossing 1 lane of general traffic. There'll be the bus lane, of course, but there'll be fewer buses than at more predictable intervals than a typical car, and then you can continue across the street. This is the stop at Eggleston Square, which is just outside Eggleston Square at Weld Avenue. You can see the Roundhouse apartment tower in the background. This is the stop under construction at Bray Street, which is right by the Walgreens, you know, that part of Columbus Ave. And then this is from earlier in the year when we first started construction, but this is the stop in the vicinity of Dimmock Street. If you know the health center, it's sort of in that general area. So if you want to learn some more about the project, and I'll, you know, I think we'll be able to post this on the presentation on the website, but the BTD project website, if you go to the boston.gov departments, transportation, Columbus Ave bus lanes, you'll be able to find out more information, including sort of a schematic map of the project. The MBTA project website is much of the same information. They actually have some better pictures than we do, so that might be a better place to look. You can also sign up for weekly updates about the project on the MBTA website as well. They're handling sort of that public engagement side of the project. And if you have any questions about the project, you can email either myself or, you know, if you want to go through BTD transit programs at boston.gov, either myself or Kirsty will be able to answer questions for you. So with that, I will stop. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You have a couple
Thanks.
in the chat, Matt.
Thanks, Matthew. I just have a quick a question to kick us off. This is Jerry, by the way. From the time that you plan, come up with an idea to the time that it's finished, what is the typical time, you know, length of the project or whatnot? So.
Yeah, that's a good question. So this bus lane project came out of a community process that began in 2016, but we really got to the point with the community that people were comfortable with the bus lane in 2019. So when we sort of went into 2020, we went virtual. We were able to have one final community meeting and then started the project in the fall of 2020. So, you know, if I think there's general community consensus, a project can actually move pretty quick. So if there's general community consensus, I'd say 6 months, you could get a project sort of started. But, you know, typically these projects come out of multi-year planning efforts.
Okay. Do you have any others that are in the pipeline currently, or?
Yeah, so we have two that we're hoping to finish this spring. One is North Washington Street in the north end. So going outbound, we're hoping to stripe a bus lane going towards the Charlestown Bridge. And then another project that we're hoping to complete in the spring is in Roslindale. We're hoping to finish striping the outbound bus lane for the peak period. And then we're hoping to add some bus bump outs in Roslindale Square as well.
As a proud West Roxbury resident off Washington Street, I can say that having the dedicated bus lane has improved commute times greatly. So thanks for that. I don't know whether that idea came from the T or came from the city first, but that's an example of how this planning is working, I think.
That's great to hear. I'm happy to hear that's working out.
So.
And actually, I can say that came from the community. That was an idea that came from, I think, sort of the origins of it was this group called Walk Up Razi, who've done a lot of really great advocacy around having better, safer streets. And they had this idea of doing a dedicated bus lane because of how busy that corridor was in the mornings. So.
Great. I know Ducia has a question.
Oops. No, what? It's not letting me. I'm trying to lower the hand.
You did.
Okay.
I
Oh,
see.
okay, good. Right, thank you, Jerry. Yeah, Matthew, thank you so much for your presentation. And yeah, so I was listening to, I was looking at the pictures, and although when you were answering Jerry's question, you almost answered also my question. So I'm just gonna piggyback on that. I am wondering, during that time that I was listening and looking at the pictures, what came to my mind was there's a lot of people still have, even though we're in COVID, but we still do all traveling with the green line, red line, and whatnot. And this problem that we still have is that some places, even if it's like whether it's subway related or even on the ground, but there's still areas where you can't get on the train because just how the street is structured. And I wonder if there's also a reason for these bus routes. So the people, like if someone wants to travel and we're like, oh, I'm not taking the green line, I'm not taking the orange line, that's just too much for me. It's too much running around or can't run around. So I'll just go to that street and take that bus because that's much easier. Is it also part of the thought process? Just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the routes that we're looking at primarily are due to delay, so existing, or I should say pre-COVID delay. So, I think that a lot of these corridors were identified because they have very high ridership. The Rosendale corridor has 19,000 riders a day. This corridor is 8,000 riders a day that we're looking at Columbus Ave. And so I think that was the primary motivation. And so we knew that by doing these things with bus enhancements, we could both get good transit facilities in, but we could also get good pedestrian facilities in too. So I think those are the primary motivations to sort of aid travel in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ducia, I can just say that we know the MBTA is working on the Green Line and access on some of those outdoor stations.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. That's a very good point too. Green Line Transformation Team, we're working with them right now on improving access to Green Line stations. They're working on Com Ave right now as we speak. They just broke ground a few days ago on some station stops in front of BU. So, they're slowly but surely upgrading all of the Green Line above ground stations. And we actually just had a meeting with them today about Symphony Station and accessibility improvements that they're making there.
I know Elizabeth had a question or a comment. She might be muted, I guess.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. One thing that comes to mind based on the prior presentation, are there situations where you're presenting this information to groups such as if there's someone in the public or who might be listening today who didn't have prior access to the presentation? I think with just a few modifications and just laying out what the visual is, that because although you said, the tactile strip as shown by my cursor, but if someone's having difficulty viewing it, either not at all or with difficulty, they just might. So I think just a brief description of what it's showing, what the slide shows might help as far as conveying the information. But someone like Carl is much more knowledgeable. But that, I just think, because also the way some people just take in information, it might just be a good compliment as people are getting oriented. But this kind of project, I think, with things like traffic reduction will be very helpful.
Elizabeth and Matt, I can say that one's on me. I know Jessica would always remind our presenters to describe what's on the screen, and I meant to do that, so my apologies. I will remember to do that next month.
This
Thank
is
you,
Carl. I have a
Commissioner. Thank
question.
you, Elizabeth. I appreciate that feedback.
No problem. Go ahead, Carl.
So, as a visually impaired person myself, I don't always know, and I'll use Commonwealth Avenue over by BU as an example, now that you have to cross the bike lanes to get to the bus shelters. I don't always know, because when they were on the same side of the sidewalk, I would just use my cane to feel where the bus shelter is or the sign is. And now that they've been moved to the middle of the street like they have in Columbus Avenue, what way would a blind person know, okay, this is where the bus stop is, this is where I need to now know across the street? So is there a pattern or a system you guys can put up, like a pole that my cane could touch? Oh, this is where the bus stop is, this is where I cross the street. Or, I mean, is there a system that you would put in place? Because I don't always know, for instance, on Commonwealth Avenue, where the bus shelters are anymore, under the new system you put in place there. So I'm hoping that's not the case as you move forward, putting bus shelters in the middle of the street, bus pickup areas and drop-off areas. So is there a way for a blind person to determine when they have to cross the street to get to the bus shelter?
That's really good feedback. I can work with the MBTA System-Wide Accessibility Office and of course the Disabilities Commission with the city and see if there aren't sort of best practices that other transit systems in North America have put in place, or if there aren't sort of better accommodations that we could add to the streets. But that's really, really good feedback. I appreciate that.
Carl, I can add too that we still work closely with Catherine. She's at the MBTA. She works on the sidewalks and bus shelters and things like that. So if you have specific concerns, Carl, we should have a conversation, because I can always take your concerns to our meetings with the MBTA.
Well, I don't know what they're doing with Columbus Avenue, but I can tell you on Commonwealth Avenue, what they did is they built a bike lane and they moved the bus shelters off the sidewalk and put them in the middle after the bike lane. So you have to cross the bike lane, and the other reason why that can be difficult at times is you can't always hear bike riders coming. So it's not like there's a push signal to say, okay, bike riders stop, because so two things have happened there. You've got to be aware of bike riders, and you don't always know where to cross the street to get to the bus shelter, at least on Commonwealth Avenue. So I just don't want to see that happen, say, with Columbus Avenue.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And, I think the hope is that we can have more bike lanes in the city. The hope is that we can have better pedestrian accommodations, and, I'll definitely follow up and see what the best practices here.
But the problem is with the bike lane, you don't have signals for them to stop. So I'm crossing the street if a bike, you know what I'm saying? So it makes it sound like I'm complaining. I'm just wanting to bring these up issues for consideration. I don't want to complain. I just want to.
You're not at all. You're not at all. No, please. This is good feedback.
Carl, there's safety issues. That's fair game.
I know Wesley had a question.
Yes, actually, I have a question. I put it in the chat, but I think it's part of Carl's question as well, related to bike lanes. So there are some bus lanes on the same side that overlap the bike lanes. So sometimes they share the same lane. Mm-hmm. And I am concerned about the future. So I'm hoping that this project can help to separate the bus lane as well as the bike lane, so that they're not confused and they're not being confused, and that they're not overlapping within the road. So I'm just wondering if there's any future plans related to that.
Yes, good question. So there is a current planning study going on right now where we're looking at neighborhood safety elements, bike connections in sort of the Eggleston Square area, to improve sort of that connection from Franklin Park, from Roxbury to the Southwest Corridor. So those plans and those studies are ongoing. And I think there'll be some additional community meetings this spring. My colleague William Moose is leading that effort.
Matt, can you let us know about those community
Great,
meetings?
thank you.
When they come out, or let the commissioner know, so that we can get interested parties to the meetings?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. And I know Olivia had a question or a comment.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I said, on Carl's point, Carl may not want to complain. I do. Because those bike lanes, I almost get hit on a semi-regular basis at Pleasant Street in particular, because the bikes don't follow any signal whatsoever. If I'm trying to use the 57, I mean, it's a dodge 'em race.
And that's the bus lane I was talking about as well, Olivia.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Mhm. No, thanks for that feedback. We can look into that.
Do we have any other questions from members of the board?
Were there any other questions in the chat?
I see one from Zari, and I apologize, I'm just looking at the chat now. By creating the bus route, will there be some loss for street parking? And the answer to that is there will be some loss for street parking along Columbus Ave. What we're trying to do is on some of the side streets where there is some loss on Columbus Ave, create additional loading zones and accessible spots sort of in that immediate area on the side streets. So that's something that we're working on for this project. But the loss in Columbus Ave is, it's a relatively small number of spaces.
Great. Any other questions from members of the board? Or any other questions from members of the public? Hearing none, thank you, Matt, very much for your presentation, and we look forward to that information about those community meetings so that we can become more involved.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is my report, and I will make, I guess what I'd like to discuss and have feedback from the members of the board is in regards to the vaccine rollout. So maybe we could discuss that under new business, or maybe that would be better under your report, Commissioner.
Yeah, I have it on my report, so if you hold off a minute, we'll get to it.
Great. That was pretty much all that I wanted to bring up, so we can move directly into the Commissioner's report.
Yes, okay, so since it's such an important topic, that's pretty much what my whole report is about tonight, except that I have two or three announcements for upcoming meetings that I wanted to share. So the MBTA has a meeting for their Forging Ahead plan coming up on February 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. And we can get the link out to people if they're interested in attending. The Abilities Expo is virtual this year, and that is happening on March 25th, from March 25th through the 27th. So we can get that event out also. And then there's an Independent Living Education Day virtual event on March 31st. So those are just a few events coming up I wanted to let you know about, but the big thing that everybody's been talking about is the vaccine rollout. So there was a listening session yesterday that I attended and some of my staff attended, and I believe I saw some board members in attendance. And it was basically organized by a healthcare advocacy group in coordination with BCIL, and Secretary Sutters attended to listen. So we heard a lot of the concerns that people brought up, and one of the biggest concerns that we know about is that people with disabilities only people with certain disabilities are going to be included in the Tier 2 rollout, and it's a very limited list of disabilities. So people are concerned about that. People are also concerned about people who can't get out of their homes to go get the vaccine. Transportation is an issue, and accessibility of the sites, especially at the mass vaccination sites. If people have to wait in crowded lines, or if they need to sit down. Accessibility for people who are blind and deaf. We know these are all concerns. So I can talk a little bit about what the city is doing, and then we can have a discussion too. I'd love to hear your concerns as well. So I'm working very closely with the Boston Public Health Commission and the Age Strong Commission on the vaccine rollouts. The city has very little control of the distribution of the vaccines. They're really coming from the state, and the state is allocating them to certain places. You may have heard the governor say that recently, I believe it was the end of last week, the state changed the allocation ratio. So they pulled some away from some communities, and they redistributed a larger amount of vaccines to certain underserved communities and mass vaccination sites. So the governor's thinking behind this is that the mass sites can vaccinate so many more people than like the smaller health centers that can only do a few hundred, where the mass vaccination sites can do thousands and thousands a day. So they want to get the highest number of people possible vaccinated. So that was the original thinking. I know the state has been very focused on equity, and they made a real strong effort to get PCAs and home health aides vaccinated in the first round, which I know we were all really supportive of and thrilled about, because we're the only state that did that. So we were happy about that, but not so happy about the disability category being so limited. So at this, city is running one vaccination site right now at the Reggie Lewis Center. The Boston Public Health Commission is running it directly, so we have a lot more control over that site. So what we've done is organized an event for this coming Saturday. It's going to be some supports in place for people with disabilities who are over 75, and now as of tomorrow, if they're over 65, they can come. We're going to reserve slots for people who are blind and deaf and maybe have other disabilities in their city residents that they can come. We're going to have sighted guides in place for people who are blind. We've actually been working closely with Kyle to set up this outreach to that community. And we're going to have mobile ASL available if anyone who's deaf wants to come. We have clear face masks for staff, and we've done some training in staff in making sure the whole area is set up as in an accessible way. And Olivia, I can't see the chat, but do you want to mention what you just put in the chat? I saw something pop up.
Yeah, tomorrow, federally funded tenants of elder disabled housing are eligible as well.
I know the city,
So-
go ahead.
I got a letter from Kate Bennett.
So is that
Stating
all
that.
BHA? Did it say all BHA?
Yeah.
Okay. See,
As long as it's not family
Family.
housing,
the
it has to
thing,
be elder disabled.
yeah, the thing is that the information from the state is kind of coming out fast and furious, and the city wasn't even aware of a lot of these changes. We get like just a couple of hours notice, and then, because, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces with the vaccine, so we want to be sure that we get the right information so we can give out information to people. So the housing piece was all new to us, you know, recently, so I'm glad to hear that information from you, Olivia. But before that, the city had just a dozen or so senior and disabled living sites that were offering vaccinations on site. But Secretary Sutter's also committed to doing in-home vaccinations for people who can't get out. And that will be according to the Medicare definition of people who are homebound, which means they can only get out of the house through ambulance. So this is the most current information I know, but I would love to hear people's thoughts and any information that you have to share.
Yeah, Commissioner, I guess I'll kick off the comments. I was part of that listening session as well, and was very glad to hear the wide range of. Actually, I was very happy to see so many people on the call and participated in the meeting, and to see such a wide range of things captured. I was disappointed today when they opened up eligibility to those 65 and older and with two comorbidities. I thought that would open up a lot more slots for folks with disabilities, but I'll just use myself for an example. Still, even with the narrow definition that the state is using, I still wouldn't qualify. So that's very, very disappointing. I really hope, and I know BCIL and other advocacy groups are doing a great job, communicating with the state, but I really hope that the work continues. And I don't know what we could possibly do as a board, or to help with that advocacy effort as well. So
One change that the governor did make today, if everybody didn't hear, was he added asthma to a comorbidity, so people, because that really hits underserved communities pretty hard. So that was a positive change, but, I mean, if anyone on the board wants to after this discussion, if anyone wants to make a motion to write a letter to the governor or to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, that would be, something to consider.
great. I know Elizabeth has a comment.
Yes, thanks. I listened to the listening session as well, and I agree that there was a lot of interest. To have 200 people is a phenomenally different level than we'd usually have. I heard afterwards that it gave. But I think certainly the current list of conditions is far too narrow, and I think that there needs. On the one hand, we're hearing about 7 new variants, in Massachusetts now. I believe they're all in Massachusetts, or at least in the U.S., and they don't know yet if literally every single variant necessarily makes it a worse situation for someone. But I think that through whatever channels possible, we need to convey to leadership at the highest level that this really needs to be at the level of a doctor's judgment, as well as in, that when someone even was saying as another way to capture, or to prove or whatever, some larger group of people, if they're on SSI or SSDI. But that in turn, there's no one measure or parameter that's going to encompass all the groups. And I thought that the man who spoke about all his PCAs being able to get vaccines, but that he personally wasn't. Now, for people who are home in that kind of a requirement to stay at home situation, I like the other prioritizations. I think most people don't find that, I would think would find that reasonable. But
And
I think
that's-
I'm concerned that until this list is expanded, are you even not that it's people's nature in the disability community per se, but in a group that's already marginalized, you're then further, in a sense, pitting one group off the other, or to eliminate other medications that suppress or lower the immune system. If the person doesn't have cancer or an organ transplant, there's a number of categories like that. And I think, but I thought the most telling thing is that they said there's been nobody on that COVID vaccine advisory board who has a disability.
That's what I was going to add, something that the city is doing. Mayor Walsh established a health equity task force under COVID several months ago, and myself and my cabinet chief, we really pushed the mayor to add someone with a disability onto the board, and he did appoint Dr. Sherry Blauett, who practices with Partners Healthcare. So she's a
Great.
wonderful advocate, and she's been serving on that board. So again, if after our discussion, if somebody wants to make a motion to write a letter to Chief Martinez, the city's Health and Human Services Cabinet, with your concerns, you could certainly, feel free to do that.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do take a position on the board if we have other people who, and I would be willing to draft it, and with whatever's the draft of the working group, because I think we're really at a critical juncture. That time is of the essence, and it's one thing to have supply issues, but to have this group that recognizably is increased risk, but does just that part of it's that there isn't this same data, or that for a combination of reasons that it hasn't what was before, when they showed these phases at an earlier point, they always showed two or more comorbidities, and I think many of us were just surprised to see how what the narrowness of and lack of awareness of what kinds of conditions people have.
It's true, and the city is limited by what the state parameters are, like with the age groups, and then frontline healthcare workers and things like that. But like I said, we are doing our part to really work on equity, because that's really the mayor's main goal, is equity. And a piece of that equity is reserving some slots for people with disabilities where we can provide extra supports for them. So again, we'll be getting the word out tomorrow, but this Saturday, there are time slots available for people who are over 65 who have disabilities that we can support to get them vaccinated. But it is, like you said earlier, Elizabeth, when you're talking about one disability, when you create a list of specific disabilities, it's always, a slippery slope, because you can't possibly include every diagnosis on a list. And people can be just as debilitated by, one thing as the next. So it is a really tough thing to do. So, we're supporting, I'm supportive, obviously, of us expanding the list. And hopefully, if we get more doses, then the governor will be open to considering that.
Yeah,
I know Wesley, oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I don't want to just to as just a direct follow up, Commissioner, and then I'll yield the floor.
Okay.
But,
I know.
Yeah. Okay. But the one thing. Well, all right. If you want me to, I'll circle back then. That's fine.
Okay. I know Wesley had a question or a comment.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I've been waiting for my turn. So I do want to follow up on Elizabeth, some of your comments, specifically about people who are on SSI or SSDI not qualifying for the vaccine. And I also have been thinking about people who are on Mass Health as well. I know people who are on Mass Health, if they're under a disability, it doesn't really matter what kind of health concerns they have. I also want to say about people who have disabilities, even if they don't have a comorbidity. I've been thinking, deaf and hard of hearing community,
their
for
lines?
example.
Can I just add, could everybody mute your lines? Thank you.
Sorry, Wesley.
No, that's fine. So I've been thinking about the deaf and hard of hearing community as well. Some people may not have a comorbidity, but at the same time, I've been thinking about those people because in my personal experience and what I've been hearing from other people with those masks, people have been finding that the deaf and hard of hearing community are just really... Sorry, one sec. Have been communicating with other people, but the deaf and hard of hearing community has been left out. People have been wearing taking their masks off to try to talk and communicate because they don't have a clear mask, and so that's a risk for the deaf and hard of hearing community as well. So we need access to communication, but we also need safety. So I'm just trying to think about why that wouldn't be a priority for the vaccine. I still don't get it. I think that group should be considered as a priority, even if there is no comorbidity, for the health and safety of the deaf community. I also wanted to mention, I already asked my doctor's office, and they said, unfortunately, we're following the state and the federal regulations. So I just, and one more thing I wanted to add as well for Fenway Park. I typed it in the chat as well. This Sunday, they will provide an ASL interpreter 9 to 5. You obviously have to meet the criteria, but they will have that there.
Yeah, Wesley,
So
I would.
that's all, a few different comments and things to think about as we move forward.
Yeah, Wesley, absolutely, people who are deaf are included in all the advocacy work for people with disabilities. We know that with or without comorbidities, people who are deaf have certain barriers in the healthcare system, and that's absolutely to be included. And again, like I said, just for the city's part, when we look at our vaccination sites, we're going to be having the the virtual ASL interpreters available. We've distributed the clear masks. We are working to ensure that people have tablets so they can type communication with people who may be deaf or hard of hearing, because we know people who are deaf with age may not know ASL, so that may be a different type of challenge. So we're looking to print out information, like the basics of what to expect, because we know people may not be able to have conversations at the time when they go to get their vaccine. So unfortunately, like you said, they still have to be in the criteria, which is over 65 at this point. But we are making all the accommodations we can for that group of people who are deaf, and definitely including people who are deaf in all our advocacy work.
Just for clarification, Commissioner, it's 65 and older or
two
folks
comorbidities.
with two comorbidities.
Sorry, I meant to
So,
put that.
um,
say that.
And Juan, you posted something interesting in the chat. Would you mind speaking to that, Juan, please?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Yes. No, just very briefly. There is a lot of discussion about people with disabilities and vaccinations. And yes, I understand there is an urgent need for everyone to receive the vaccination because we're very susceptible. Perhaps not ourselves, but because we are surrounded by many people who come to help us, right? Like primary care assistants and all sorts of other helps who are often exposed more than us, who are basically staying at home. So that's why sometimes there is a need for us to get the vaccination. But this disease is very new. Right now, the CDC, what it's doing basically is trying to update a list of those kind of diseases who may have some kind of more like recent evidence of what are those groups that are at higher risk. So I guess it would be a good idea for us to follow those kind of information and based on that make the recommendations as well. And I'm sure the state is tracking all of that. But what we want is just perhaps to add a little extra spot on this situation, because not necessarily we are exposed to, not necessarily we may have a comorbidity or an increased risk, but we are more exposed to people who are helping us and can bring the disease to us. So
Those are really
that's
good
just
points.
something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, the points that Juan Carlos and Wes brought up are really good points that you could include in a letter if you choose to write one to the state and to the city, just pointing out that people who are deaf have other healthcare barriers and that people who have disabilities and have home care workers are exposed to multiple people who they can't control. They can't keep those people in their bubble because they often don't live with those people. So those are great points to put in a letter if you choose to write one.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
And I
I'd
know.
like to make a motion.
Wait a second, Carl. We had a couple more comments first, Carl. Go ahead, Ducia.
All right. So I don't know if this is okay. I don't know if this is a rumor or not. I've heard that since until recently, you like anybody who was younger and had comorbid conditions could only get the vaccine if they were as a quote-unquote companion for somebody who was 65 and older. I don't know if that was a rumor or that was actually the case until recently. I don't know. Does anybody know anything specific? It's probably changed.
Yes. Ducia, companions of folks 75 and older who were assisting them get to a vaccination site, they were allowed to get the vaccination that day as well. But now, with today's announcement, it's going to open up even more for folks, as we've been saying, 65 plus plus anyone with two comorbidities that are on the CDC's list and the state's list of highly at-risk folks. So,
Right, but I believe the companion piece still only goes along with people who are 75 and older. So I don't
Sure.
think that 65 and older could bring a companion, or, I know I saw in the chat yesterday at the listening session, could people who had home health care, like PCAs, could they bring like their person with a disability as a companion? But I don't think that's the case. It's only for 75 plus.
I think that, I mean, it's great that the state did that, and at the governor's press conference today, he even said, we made the decision early on to vaccinate, put home health aides and PCAs at the top of the list. I would have thought it would have been great to say, you can come with your PCA or with your consumer. I mean, where they did open it up to the companions for the 75 and older. I thought it would have been a great step for them to include us as well, because in my mind, it doesn't make sense to have the folks caring for us be vaccinated and us still be at high risk. So.
Thank you for the clarification on that. It just sounded like you only could go with somebody as a companion just to get, you couldn't, I'm sorry, it sounded like if you had comorbidity issues, you couldn't go unless you were a companion to somebody.
Right, well, they opened up, more slot, they said today at the press conference that it would allow about 1 million more people to be vaccinated with the change that they're implementing starting tomorrow. So I do know that we need to move on to other business too. But we'll have Elizabeth close out, and then we'll have Carl make his motion to write a letter. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think people brought up excellent points. Given that we're going to have a letter, I think we all just need to continue to follow and push this, that things like the terminology might be at risk, or right now they're saying heart conditions such as. So I think if anyone has a heart condition in the community and it's not listed as, a cardiomyopathy or whatever, if it's not explicitly listed, then also if your physicians are not, if your doctors aren't as aware, then say, this is just as such as, it's not exclusionary. I do realize we have to work within certain constraints as we continue to open it up more. So I appreciate that.
All right. So it sounds like from our discussion that we think that a letter to the state and the city is appropriate. Do I have a motion to work on a draft of a letter?
I so move. I make the motion.
Any seconds?
Seconds.
Olivia seconds, and
Second.
I heard Elizabeth was willing to take the lead on drafting said letter.
But
Jerry,
I
just
hope
make sure everybody votes, though.
Oh.
All in favor?
I'm sorry. All in favor of drafting a letter to the state and the city, on advocacy regarding the vaccine rollout and equity?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, the motion carries, and as discussed, Elizabeth will work on drafting the letter, and she welcomes feedback from any of the advisory board members who can. So,
One other note, just to keep in mind too, I've seen some advocacy groups writing letters too. If you see some that you decide you'd like to sign on to, just send me an email and we can look into that as well.
great.
Just lastly, Jerry, I don't know if anyone else would like to identify now as being part of a little group or that we sometimes have had, but I am happy to take the lead.
Well, I'd be, I'll certainly, as chair, I'd be happy to work with you on that as well, Elizabeth, so.
I can work on it too with you, Elizabeth.
Oh, great, thank you.
Great, but that's not to the exclusion of anyone. Please,
No.
if anyone has thoughts or whatnot, please feel free to email Elizabeth, myself, or the commissioner, and we'll make sure your thoughts are included. And thanks everyone for such a fruitful discussion, and hopefully we'll see some improvement, to the narrow definitions that the state is currently using. So, next on the agenda is board elections. I know we mentioned last month that we'd really like to have board elections for chair and for vice chair and secretary and treasurer. And one person's expressed interest. Elizabeth has expressed interest. I don't know if anyone else has expressed interest, to the commissioner or her staff, or if anyone would so move to include themselves now.
So I've only heard from Elizabeth, and the way this can work is somebody can, we can have a brief discussion if anyone wants to throw their names out there for one of the 4 executive positions, and then someone else can nominate that person, and then you would vote. So we can start with chair. Can we just ask if anyone has an interest in chair? You can speak up if you are interested. I believe I got an email from Elizabeth.
I just want to say that I don't mind being again any officer. No, my only issue is that I don't have a printer at home. That's my only thing. Otherwise, I'm happy to be again or do another position.
Great.
Just throwing it out there.
I wouldn't think that not having a printer is a barrier, Elizabeth. I mean, Deuce, yeah, I don't have one either. So,
No, not at all.
So,
Well, and you did a great job maintaining our funds.
right.
It's hard to manage no money.
But as the rest of you saw, UCF was, certainly if you instead think of it as, another executive board member at large, so to speak.
Yeah, and the executive committee really, we can be whatever you make it, but it does carry some weight. And, you can be more often if there are things that are really important, like this vaccine rollout is super important. So, you are the city's voice of the advocacy community. So you carry a lot of weight, and I really want you to use that. And that's why I'd love to hear people who are interested in these positions. So I'll give another call for chair. Does anyone want to raise their hand if they're interested in being nominated for chair? Does anyone want to nominate anyone else for chair and see if they were interested in accepting it?
I'd like to nominate Olivia.
I'll accept it.
You have to have a vote
Yeah, certainly.
or discussion.
Do we have a quorum? Before we can vote, do we have a quorum?
Do we have a
We
quorum?
do have a
Other than
quorum.
that, but-
Yep, we do.
Okay.
But before
So-
we vote, do we want to throw it out there? Does anybody else want to throw their hat in the ring for chair? No one?
Do we want to have, do we have discussion?
Anyone have interest in other positions as well?
One point of clarification, although Olivia did a phenomenal job being our secretary, I don't think, even though I know you're short-staffed now, Commissioner, I don't mean you personally, but going forward, when you do have someone who, no one will fill Jessica's shoes in some ways, but when you do have an additional administrative assistant, that you, before Olivia took over, you didn't necessarily have someone on a board member that I was aware of who, that the secretary had to be able to take the kind of real-time, thorough notes that Olivia did. But that level of notes is not required, is that correct?
No, it's not required. You can certainly nominate somebody for a secretary who is not able to do the minutes. That's fine. All right, so we have one nomination for chair. And so it's up to somebody to make a motion?
No, there's two.
Well, we have
Oh, two?
Two.
No,
Okay.
there's two now.
we have an election for two people, correct?
That's you, Elizabeth? Okay.
And
I didn't hear you say it, so, what's that?
Elizabeth and Olivia.
Okay, I got your email, Elizabeth, but I didn't hear you say it now, so I didn't want to put you on the spot.
no, I misunderstood you. I just meant, I wanted to make sure that Olivia was included.
Okay, all
That it's,
right, great. All right,
so it's a fair election after all we've been through in the last several months.
So we should vote, yes?
Yep. The chairperson usually runs the vote
Okay, so,
if it's not in the election.
do a show of
Okay.
hands.
could you, does everybody have access to the raise the hand feature?
Yes?
Yes.
Could you
And just raise your
hand?
hand.
Raise your hand if you.
I do not, so I'll do it physically. Who are we voting for first?
Elizabeth,
For Elizabeth?
yes.
I see 3, is that correct?
That's what I saw.
Okay, great.
And now, do we have votes for Olivia?
And my hand is raised.
Say Wes is trying to vote twice. I don't blame
Yeah, you
him.
voted,
I don't blame him,
voted
it's a
for
tough
both.
call.
No, sorry,
just
I voted
kidding.
already.
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
That's fine.
So do I see 4?
And Carl as well, I believe.
Yeah, so 3 buttons and then Carl. So 4. All right, so I think the chair will call it then.
A very close vote, but it looks like Olivia is our next chair.
Okay.
Congratulations, Olivia.
I heard about
Let's-
Olivia being
Congratulations,
quiet and making sure her voice isn't heard.
So in terms of the other, since no one stepped forward, Commissioner, what
I would like to
should we do
nominate
about
Elizabeth for
the
vice
other
chair.
offices?
Comment, Carl? Carl, what did you say?
I would
Yes.
like to nominate Elizabeth for vice chair.
Oh, okay, good. Anyone else?
I'd like to second that.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
Elizabeth, would you let the board know if you're still interested?
Well, that treasury position / at-large is looking very tempting, but
Elizabeth, I can switch with you. I don't mind.
yeah, no, certainly, no, and especially to have Olivia's endorsement is, seconding the nomination, is certainly a praise. I think the hour is late and we're all a little punchy. So that
Yep.
is something I do accept.
Great.
Call for a vote?
All in
So
favor
I
of,
move that we close nominations and accept her nomination by unanimous consent.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 I,
Aye.
The motion carries, Carl. Thank you for simplifying that process, Carl. Congratulations to Elizabeth. And now we have the secretary, is that correct?
Yep, which is vacant now because Olivia is the chair.
And again, nobody jumped at it initially, but is there anyone who would be interested in being secretary? And that person can work very closely with your office on the notes. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Correct.
They don't have to live up to Olivia's lofty standards.
Right.
I was ridiculous.
No, it was very much appreciated. Yes, so Ducia, if you want to
Yeah.
switch your role, you don't worry about your printer.
If I could get support with the secretarial part, I'll accept it because I don't believe myself. I mean, I'm really good at writing, generally speaking. I mean, even my professors say that even my teachers say that they are surprised about how good I'm at writing. So if I can get support with writing, I could do secretary.
Well, Ducia, I mean, you could always try it out too, right? I mean, it's not a lifetime appointment, right?
I know, yeah, sure.
And it's more that your voice is heard. I think it's more important that your voice is heard as a member of the community.
Exactly.
I nominate Lucia as the secretary for the Boston Disability Commission.
And do we want to do it all by, unanimous decree
We gotta wait
again?
and see if there are any other nominations.
Oh, any other nominations?
Now you can say hearing none, I'll say it. Hearing none, I make a motion that we close the nominations and vote by unanimous consent for Lucia for secretary of the Boston Disability Commission.
Jeez, I knew why you're on the board. I mean, I knew your state experience, Carl, would come in handy at some point. And it really is tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, you
only
sound
took
very
9 years.
professional, Carl.
Gee.
All in favor?
So all in favor?
I,
Aye.
The motion carries. Congratulations, Ducia.
Thank you.
And now for the most important position, other than the chair, as Carl would say, to handle all our funds, the treasurer position. And Ducia can speak to how difficult the position was over the past few years.
But again, even though there's no funding to be handled, again, it's more important that you're a representative of the community and that you're part of the executive committee and your voice will be heard, so.
I nominate Juan Carlos for that position.
I second.
Juan Carlos, are you interested?
I would. I'm so honored, but I will have to decline for that because I'm really focused with my career right now. So I don't know if I would be able to have everyone's help.
Okay.
Everyone's
Fair
assistance.
enough.
So I'm so sorry for that, but I really appreciate your nomination. Yeah.
No
That's
problem.
perfectly understandable.
I would nominate Wesley for that position.
I support the nomination.
I just saw
Thank
him.
you so much.
yes.
Okay.
And like Juan Carlos, I do have to unfortunately
Okay.
decline. I'm very busy with life. You know, I do have my baby at home, so
Understood.
yeah.
Hey, Carl, come on board.
We do also have a few board
I
members.
my hearing aid in. What'd you say?
Come on board, Carl. Be the secretary.
I'll accept, if you want to nominate, I'll accept as being treasurer.
All right, great. I nominate Carl for treasurer, and you could say your, you
I
could say-
second.
You could say your,
In a second.
you could say your professional spiel there, Carl.
Well, I think it should be somebody else this time since I'm.
No, I can't say it as well though. I don't know.
Okay. And now you got me confused. I vote that we close the nomination, I hold that we close the nominations and vote by unanimous consent to have Carl Richardson be treasurer.
Great.
And Megan Sullivan.
Well, she does control the money.
Good one.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations to the new executive board.
Yeah, congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations.
I think I've held every position now except for secretary.
Yep, you have.
Well, there's always next time, Carl, right?
We'll see. We'll see how things go.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And it was my honor to serve as your chair. And I would continue, but again, I really think that it's time for someone else's voice to be heard, and to have the experience. And I know Olivia's going to do a fantastic job, and I will still be a very, very active participant. So
I couldn't agree more, Jerry, and I really want to thank you for your service. You were an outstanding chair, and you just did a great job. And I know you're handing the torch to very capable hands with Olivia, and so glad for the rest of the staff, too. So congratulations, everyone.
thanks. Everybody
Thanks,
stay
Jerry.
safe. And thank you for all your good input tonight. Stay
Wait.
safe, stay well.
We'll just have to, just see if there's any
Old
public
business,
input.
New business, public input.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, geez. It's because it's getting so late. I'm getting punchy here.
We can do it real quick.
Yes, do we have any new, is it new business first?
Old business.
Old business. Do we have any old business, Commissioner?
I'm still working on a few things, the captioning ordinance and a few other things, but I'll follow up with you through email. I don't have anything new right now to report, but I will send you an update through email.
Great. Any new business?
Here's Jucia. I just want to mention, I spoke earlier with Patricia Mendes about this already. I apologize also that I wasn't able to attend the last meeting last month. And I did talk about, there was like a park situation with construction, and I was share my concern via email about to figure out how that would affect the people who were having mobility issues and whatnot. And I was informed that it's still an ongoing conversation. So I guess I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for bringing thank you for bringing your concerns to the commissioner and our staff this year. As always. Any other new business? Any public input on anything that we've discussed tonight? Hearing none or seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, there we go. This is my favorite part of the meeting. I make a motion to adjourn.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, what I was gonna say a minute ago, everybody stay safe, get vaccinated when it's your turn, and we'll see everybody next month.
Thank you for all your work, Jerry.
Thank you,
Thank
Jerry.
you.